Today we will discuss a novella written by Robert Louis Stevenson called Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It is a classic novella that explores themes of duality, identity, and the nature of evil. Before jumping into the plot summary, let us have a look about the setting. The novella is set in Victorian London and opens with Mr. Gabriel Utterson, a lawyer, and his friend Mr. Richard Enfield, who are taking a walk. Enfield recounts a disturbing event he witnessed involving a sinister man named Edward Hyde. Before jumping into the summary, let us have a look about the important characters in this novella. The first character is Dr. Henry Jekyll, a respected doctor who experiments with his dual nature. Second is Mr. Edward Hyde, the evil, violent alter ego of Dr. Jekyll, created through a scientific experiment. The third is Mr. Gabriel Utterson, a lawyer and Dr. Jekyll's friend who investigates the strange occurrences. The fourth is Mr. Richard Enfield, Utterson's distant relative and friend who first witnesses Hyde's malevolent behavior. And the last important character is Dr. Hasty Lanyon, a friend of both Utterson and Jekyll, who becomes entangled in Jekyll's secrets. Now let's directly jump into the plot summary. Utterson learns from Enfield about an encounter with Hyde, who trampled a young girl and subsequently paid off her family with a check signed by Dr. Jekyll. Utterson, concerned for his friend Jekyll, who has recently altered his will to make Hyde the sole beneficiary, decides to investigate. Utterson visits Jekyll and expresses his concerns about Hyde. Jekyll reassures him that he can get rid of Hyde whenever he chooses. However, Utterson remains uneasy. Over time, Utterson learns that Hyde is becoming increasingly violent and uncontrollable. A year later, Hyde brutally murders Sir Danvers Carew, a well-known and respected gentleman. A maid witnesses the attack and identifies Hyde as the perpetrator. With Hyde's violence now public knowledge, Utterson confronts Jekyll, who promises he is done with Hyde forever, and shows Utterson a letter from Hyde indicating he is leaving for good. Utterson's concerns grow when Dr. Lanyon, once a close friend of Jekyll, falls gravely ill after receiving a mysterious letter from Jekyll. Before dying, Lanyon gives Utterson a letter to be read only after Jekyll's death or after his disappearance. Jekyll's servants summon Utterson to Jekyll's house, fearing something terrible has happened. They find Hyde dead, dressed in Jekyll's clothes, having apparently committed suicide. Utterson finds a new will that leaves everything to him and a confession letter from Jekyll. The final chapter consists of Jekyll's confession. He reveals his experiments to separate his good and evil sides. By drinking a potion, he transformed into Hyde, allowing his darker impulses to run free. Initially, Jekyll enjoyed his dual life, but Hyde's actions grew increasingly vile and uncontrollable. Over time, Jekyll found himself transforming into Hyde involuntarily. Realizing he could no longer control the transformations, Jekyll wrote his confession and took his own life to prevent Hyde from taking over permanently. With this story comes to an end. Now let's discuss the important themes of the story. The first important theme is duality of human nature. The central theme of the novella is the duality of human nature, illustrating the conflict between the good and evil within a person. Jekyll's transformation represents the struggle between his noble aspiration and his base desires. The second is identity and transformation. The story explores the fluidity of identity and how one's darker side can overtake the good if given the chance. Jekyll's experiments symbolize the Victorian struggle with strict social norms and hidden vices. The third is science and morality. Jekyll's scientific experiments raise questions about the ethical limits of scientific exploration and the consequences of tampering with the human soul. And the last important theme is repression and Victorian society. The novella reflects the repressive nature of Victorian society, where outward appearances were maintained while darker impulses were hidden away. Jekyll's need to create Hyde stems from the societal pressure to conform to moral standards. Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde remains a powerful exploration of the human psyche, illustrating the dangers of unrestrained scientific experimentation and the complexity of human nature. Stevenson's work continues to be relevant for its profound psychological insights and its commentary on the dual aspects of the human identity.